screens and we're not really connecting. But here's my question, because that was kind of a long ramble. The question is, I know you talk a lot about, well, it's not authentic. It's not authentic. Okay. Hi, Cynthia Garcia. I was on your call today when you said that you don't like the word authentic because it's overused. Well, here's what Jenn says. Jenn passionately believes the more raw and real we can be, the deeper the connections we can experience. This drives her fierce commitment to bring voice to the invisible stories that free people from their isolation. And I went totally off like what I normally do. I don't normally go back and read anything, but Jenn, that like gave me just goosebumps when I read it in your bio, and I took it out for like this, maybe for this discussion about what does that mean to you to be raw and real? And oh my goodness, when you're working with corporate clients, how is this possible?
There's so much to unpack with this question. And there's so many things that in your, as you said, your ramble that I feel like I have opinions and thoughts on, but for the interest of time, I will try to be succinct. So for me, so if I go back in time, I started consulting around LGBTQ issues within workplace settings, again, with financial services, banking, insurance, because I worked for an insurance company where I personally was discriminated against for my sexual orientation. So it came from a specific need that I was experiencing. And I felt so alone because we had like maybe 100 people that worked there. Statistically speaking, there should have been at least 3 of us in the workplace. I was the only one, at least that was out. And that experience really fundamentally changed how I viewed so many different things, because it was the workplace where you have an expectation of being able to feel safe. And when you don't have that safety, and I feel like it should be similar for schools, right? Like there are certain spaces in our lives that should be safe spaces. And oftentimes for many different marginalized and underrepresented groups, that's the case for them. And so I took that experience, and that's a lot of the content of my 3 of my books, actually 4 of them. 4 of them really kind of touch upon that quite a bit. Like all my stories out there. There's no shortage of kind of like depth of that. And for me, what I started to realize when I would be working in a consulting capacity, the people who were spearheading certain initiatives within these companies also had that feeling of unsafety at some point in what they were doing. And they were trying to do what they could to bring that safety into their organization, which a lot of times, as you kind of said at the top, requires that outside opinion, that outside consultant to kind of bring the one to be like, hey, people, listen, like we have a problem here. But I think that it's a twofold situation where you have on one side, it's the, I don't feel safe here, we need to change our culture. But on the other side, it's who's making the business case, who's making the argument that not only is this something that we should do, but it's going to be the thing that actually benefits the bottom line of the company. And I think it's making that argument at the same time can be really challenging for people. So back to my statement, I think it's that rawness and that realness that if you and I can have a really deep, raw conversation about something that's really uncomfortable, the people who listen to that conversation, and regardless of what medium it is, it doesn't need to be in a podcast format where thousands of people are listening. It could just be in a conversation where there's 6 of us. And I think that if you can model that, and I think it's deeper than authenticity, because I would agree, I do think authenticity in general is an overused term. And for me, it's deeper than authenticity, because you can fake your way through authenticity, but you can't really fake your way through being really raw and really real and exposed and vulnerable with whatever the story is that you're sharing, and still kind of have the same impact. Because for me, it's all about impact. I don't want to work on a book unless I know that there is impact to be made and that somebody is going to do something. So it's kind of like blending these very separated communities and worlds into one where it's like, okay, how can we look at a book and say, this person's a consultant? We have a lot of books that are on diversity, equity, and inclusion. But at the same time, it's not just to say, hey, here's a 5-step process to change your company culture. It's the author has to go real deep. And I mean like real deep, and really connect with that reader on such an emotional level that their rawness and realness is the thing that makes them say, I have to change whatever it is that they're further teaching about. Because I think for authors, and I'm curious if you agree, but I think with a lot of authors, especially nonfiction, business type of environments, they don't want to tell their story. Like I have to force authors quite frequently to be like, there's no you in this. Like I get your model, I get your methodology, I see what you're saying, but where are you? Because the reader wants to know you and wants to know who you are. And so it's this kind of blend of all of these different things.
I totally agree with the idea that we need story banks. And I'm stealing that from a previous guest, Laura.